All right, guys, it's now day 2 out of 100. We're back and we're going to dive into a tutorial of the basics of Lightroom. So now that we're in Lightroom, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at this picture of my buddy Jason who plays baseball. This photo is from about a year ago, but I think it's a great photo that we should start out on. I think it has a lot of good things that we need to dive into that makes it a little bit more difficult to make this photo look really good. So the first thing that I notice is that there's sunlight coming in on his face from the left. So that's going to give us a good opportunity to change the color of that and to mask it, but we'll do that later. Okay, so first let's start out with the light. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn up this exposure just a little bit so that we can get that extra light, kind of light up the image. It's already pretty bright, but we're going to go ahead and fix that. We're going to add some contrast. It's going to add some depth to the photo. We want to make sure that we don't overdo it. Otherwise, whenever we overdo it, you'll see that it changes the color too much, and we don't want to do that. We just want to add a little bit to separate him from the background as much as we can. Now we're going to turn down our highlights just a bit, because what it's going to do is it's going to remove how harsh the sun and this light is up here. So if we turn our highlights down to right there, you can already see that we've made a difference of clearing more image for his face and cutting it off, but also removing some of the excess light that's too bright. Let's actually turn that exposure down a little bit. It's perfect. As you can see, we've already made a big detail or a big difference in the detail. Right here, you can tell that a little bit more depth to the photo. You can tell that this is separated from this just by looking at it from the contrast. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna lower those shadows. What that's gonna do is it's gonna create this depth of field effect where it's dark on one side of the image over here, but it's light over here because the sun's shining over here and the shadows are over here. So when you lower those shadows, it's going to darken the image, but if you raise them, you start to see more details that kind of mess up the photo, like smudges on the helmet. You can see through the ear hole and you can see through the glasses, but if you drag those shadows down just a little bit, so go ahead and clear that. And then we'll go up and we'll touch the exposure up a little bit, just so that we can still have a bright image, but we're gonna go ahead and cut that off with the shadows. Next, we're gonna go down to our whites. I like the way that our whites are looking right now. I might turn them down just a little bit so that it's not overpowering, because if we turn our whites up, we're gonna see what it does. If we turn it down a little bit, the white isn't gonna be as bright. So now we're gonna go to our blacks. Our blacks are really important in the sense of working with our shadows and our contrast. If we turn it up, you'll see that it reveals more of the helmet again. Turn it down, it's gonna make the blacks a little bit darker. Sometimes I like to turn it down just to enhance those shadows, to make it a little bit more, give it a little bit more depth, but also not making the image too dark. So you can see that we've got our nice shadows in here and our shadows back here, but we're still getting the sun and we're getting a lot of detail right here. Now we're gonna go down to our color mixer. So what I'm gonna wanna do is we're gonna go here to this yellow, and I like to give the yellow a little bit less luminance so that whenever we add a little bit warmer of a touch, it's not going to be as overpowering in the image. And I also want to get this purple, and I'm going to go ahead and darken it a little bit so it doesn't mix in with the white, and we're going to saturate it just a little bit more so that it pops out. We really want that color to pop. And if this photo doesn't apply too much, just because there's not too much photo or there's not too much color in the photo, but I like to add a little bit of vibrance. You'll see that the sky starts to pop out more than when it originally did. You'll see this right here. Also, if you're wondering, I'm pressing slash to show the original image, just to compare what I've done. So you turn that vibrance up a little bit, and the temperature, we're gonna make it a little bit more yellow. And as you can see, it's a little too yellow right here. So we're gonna go back to our yellow, and we're gonna desaturate it just a little bit, and maybe make it a little bit cooler. So now we have these nice colors with a lot of detail. We're gonna go ahead and we'll do our color grading last after we go ahead and go through all of this. So I like to turn up the clarity just a little bit, not too much, because I really like the details that it adds without adding too much grain. You really get a lot of detail just by turning up your clarity to like +20. And then you go to sharpening. Here's where a lot of people mess up. Sharpening can look really, really good if you do it the right way. But as you can see, if I crank it all the way up and I zoom in, we get this grainy image, and it's gonna look not very natural. So what we can do is we're gonna turn our sharpening down just a little bit to like 100, and we're gonna go to masking. And if you hold the Alt key, while you're dragging it, it'll show you exactly what you're masking. So here will be the whole image, but here we only want to sharpen the details on Jason. So now we have not as much grain up here. As you can see, most of the grain went away, but we did sharpen the details around here. So that's pretty much what you want to know about that. You can also change the radius up if you think that it needs to be a little bit more sharper, turn it down if you think it's too sharp. Sometimes I'll just like to slide that up a little bit, but not too much. And now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna color grade. Now that we've got all of our basic things down, we're gonna dive into a little bit harder of a way to do it. Everyone kind of has their own feel of how they like images to look. So color grading can be difficult, and it can be especially difficult to get into. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and just select one of them and start with this. So for most of my photos, I like to give it a little bit of a bluish tint, and then in the shadows, and then in the highlights, I want to give it a little bit of an orangish yellow tint right here. You can play around until you think you see. You also don't want to mess around too much with it, because you'll notice that the lights up here, if I go too yellow, kind of changes this light into this pinkish color. We want to make sure that the image still looks similar to when we originally made it. So here, you see you get this little added extra tint. Sometimes that's okay, and you can fix that through a number of things. So there we go. So this is what I'm going to start off with for my color grading, and I'm going to go into these midtones. And this midtones is going to be basically where light goes to dark, and then like in between light and dark, and it's everything in the middle. So you'll notice that it can really adjust the whole image no matter what color I put on it. You'll really see that it makes a difference. For this photo, I'm going to want it to be a little bit cooler, just because I'm about to go in and I'm about to mask. So now we have this image, and it's got this blue and this orange tint to it. We made it a little bit warmer up here in our white balance. We made the white balance a little bit warmer. So now we have this image that's separate from our original image. And what we're gonna go through now is we're gonna mask. And so masking is a really easy way to make your photo stand out, because anyone can go through and edit everything that they just edited. But what we wanna do is we wanna mask. So we're gonna go to this masking area down here, and we're gonna go to linear gradient. And so a hotkey for that is if you just press L, it'll open up a linear gradient for you to make. And how I was saying that the sun's coming in from the left, we're gonna try to emphasize that you can see that the sun's coming in, but you don't wanna give it too much over here so that we still have that depth effect. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this. We're gonna go ahead and raise this temperature and make it a little bit warmer. Bring the exposure, make sure the highlights are still down. And as you can see, we're really getting this emphasis on, how the photo looks realistically through the sun. The sun's coming in, and it's looking like this. It's a little too bright right now. I'm gonna go ahead and drag the exposure down just a little bit, right there. And now we can go through and kind of refine it. I think it looks a little too high in contrast on that spot. So we're gonna lower that down. Again, lower our highlights. We might lower the shadows a little bit. So we're still getting the light on the face, the sun's coming in. And that'll pretty much be it for now, mainly because there's only one light source and we're not trying to emphasize anything else. There's a lot of things to do in masking, but for day 2, this is really all we're gonna go over. So this is the final outcome of the photo. It's not too much changed about it other than fixing the color, going through and trying to emphasize certain coloring aspects, light aspects, and masking. So this was our original photo right here. Here's our original photo. As you can see, we're missing a lot of color. There's not too much depth in the photo. The shadows seem off. Feels very, I don't know, white and just missing color, kind of gray and default. And then you go through and this was the image that we came out with. So that's pretty much the tutorial on how to like find your way around Lightroom. Especially with all these sliders, they can look very, all look very intimidating. You might not know how to use them. You don't know which each one does. And really the best way to go through this as a beginner is to just kind of mess around with these sliders until you kind of see what you like. They all kind of work together. You just want to make sure that you're using them in the right way. Like exposure, you can turn up your exposure to add more light to the image, but if it's too bright on the face or if there's just too much glare, you can always turn the highlights down to remove the glare. One thing I like to do also that we didn't go over is you can dehaze, which will turn the sky. It won't work on this photo just because you can't see enough of the sky. But if you dehaze, you can really start to see the sky more. You'll get that nice blue color. Might be able to get away with turning the vibrance up a little bit more just to see that sky. So yeah, that'll be the final product of this photo that we went through and we edited. I think the colors turned out really well. I think this is a great image. When you're taking a photo, you really want to focus on a lot of detail. You want to focus on, how can I make this photo look cool, look different? We're very zoomed in. We've got a lot of compression, very blurry background, a nice bokeh. So that's the end of this video. We'll come back for day 3. We'll dive into some more tutorials. But that's all for day 2. We'll see you on day 3.